Hi, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Wonder Snatch. The Paris Olympics are underway and this is one of the only sporting events that I actually watch. And of course it's not without controversy, okay? I'm not talking about the drag queen Last Supper thing, that's like stupid. But there's some really important gender things happening, okay, with boxing and other sports, where some female athletes are under a lot of scrutiny, okay, about their gender, okay? And this has been made into some sort of trans issues by TERFs like J.K. Rowling, but it's not, okay? These are actual women who have undergone sex testing, gender testing during the Olympics, okay? And today I'm going to talk a bit about history of that and why it's actually quite oppressive and patriarchal. Oh. All right, okay, and today, as you can see from my background, I'm going to be doing a Brat look in celebration of the new president-elect of America, Kamala Harris, okay? And yes, so join me to get bratty and talk about this sex testing. All right, I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so my base is done, and now I'm just going to get started on this line makeup using the Trixie Cosmetics Chartreuse Pac-Man, which I think I will probably not ever use in any other makeup look. And yeah, let's start talking about sex testing at the Olympics. Okay, so all this is actually nothing new, okay? I think almost every time there's a sporting event, there's always some woman who's being pointed out as being too mannish or being too thug-like, okay, to be a woman, okay, and having an unfair advantage over other women in the sport. And this time, two female boxers have been accused of having this unfair advantage for having failed some gender testing, okay, previously. But this time they're actually qualifying, okay? But one of these women, okay, Imane Khelif, is an Iranian boxer. She knocked out her opponent pretty early in one of the rounds, okay, and within like seconds, okay, and this seemed like she had a really unfair advantage, and people started calling her transgender and everything, especially J.K. Rowling, who decided to make this a transgender issue. Hopefully, I don't have to mention about J.K. Rowling's past of being a TERF. That's a trans exclusionary radical feminist, okay? A lot of women who, especially in sports, have this notion that men are trying to sneak into women's sports by being transgender and, you know, dominating those categories. And this is actually really old excuse for excluding trans and other gender diverse individuals from partaking in competitive sports. Just to be clear, Imane Khelif, okay, and this other boxer, Lin Yuting from Taiwan, they identify as women, okay, they were born as women, raised as women, and have always competed as women, okay, so, and whatever gender testing they've done in the past, they have passed. They did fail one gender test last year in some World Boxing Championships, and this was undisclosed. I don't know what test they did there. Maybe not even an approved test, okay, which we'll talk about later. Okay, but this time for the Olympics, they qualified. Okay, and this Paris Olympics is actually supposed to be the one where gender equity has finally been met, okay, where equal number of men and women are competing in the sport. So this is actually quite a historic Olympics, but it's been marred by all these controversies. Okay, bringing my NB, same as last time. So this gender eligibility criteria for sports has actually quite a long history, okay? And it is basically something that is reinforcing the gender binary that we're also steeped in. The Olympics itself, okay, when the modern Olympics was first conceived of in 1896, okay, of course only men were allowed to compete. Okay, women were excluded completely from the very first few Olympics, and allowing women to compete in sports at the time was considered to be barbaric and uncivilized, okay, and women were too delicate and gentle to be taking part in these competitive events. So they were excluded until 1900, when the first women categories were allowed, and at the time they were only allowed in sports such as tennis and golf. Not brutish thing like, you know, track and field and weightlifting and all that stuff. Of course, slowly over the next few decades, they were allowed to take part in more and more different sports. In the 1930s, there were a few athletes that actually brought attention to this issue, okay, because of their atypical gender expression. Okay, in 1936, there was a shot putter who was competing in the female categories, who transitioned to male, okay, in 1936. And he's a man named Mark Weston. It's actually not very clear whether Mark was like taking, you know, male hormones while he was competing. But when he transitioned, there was a newspaper article about it. The newspaper article for the time was actually quite empathetic, and it wasn't really offensive for the times, okay? So that was quite good. But it did spark questions amongst other competitors and sporting bodies to whether people like Mark should be allowed to compete in female categories for sports. There was another case in 1938 of a German shot putter called Dora Ratian, who turned out to be intersex, okay? She was born with ambiguous genitalia, and the Nazis, when they examined her, forced her to live life as a woman, okay? Because otherwise she'd be persecuted like all the other categories in the LGBT community during World War II. So she was forced to live as a woman, but always knew something was wrong. She didn't really know what, and she took part as a shot putter in the Olympics and actually won gold. She was actually arrested on a train because some other people thought that she looked suspiciously masculine, okay? And when she was brought in for testing and examined, she was found to have this ambiguous genitalia, and she realized that she was intersex, and after that decided to live life as a man. So cases like this started to call into question whether there were these men masquerading as women, okay, and taking part in female categories. And that's when they started sex testing to validate people's womanliness. Okay, I'm using this chocolate truffle Huda Beauty. It's really dark, so I'm just using a little bit. Okay, at the time, science wasn't advanced enough to do all the blood testing and everything, so the most reliable way that people could do sex testing at the time was by physical examination. So you can imagine, they used to have things like naked parades, where women had to parade naked in front of inspectors to make sure that they were women, that they had the correct genitalia and not too masculine in their physique. And of course you can tell by this alone that this was all a white male idea of what a woman should be. So a lot of the natural variation in women's bodies were ignored. So women who were a bit taller, a bit more masculine, a bit more muscular were all excluded because they were too manly. This is of course way before the idea of intersex people and transgender people were conceived, okay? But people always knew there was always some sort of variation in gender, but no one ever really wanted to talk about it properly because at the time, everyone was so subscribed to the gender binary of man, woman, nothing else, especially in the Western world. Okay, so now I'm just going to go into some yellow brows. I'm going to try a different thing today. This is from Crystal Versace's most recent video makeup tutorial, where she actually leaves her face tapes on until after she finishes all her makeup. I usually put it on before everything so I can get my brow the shape I wanted, but she says that doing it after gives you a more lifted effect because, you know, if you do it before, you're just going to draw your normal face anyway. Then if this comes off, everything sags down. So I think I'm going to try doing it her way and see what happens. So I'm just going to pick up some yellow brows because that's going to be my wig color. Okay, and I'm just going to blend out the front here. It's less harsh. Okay, just going to clean that up with some clown white. Later in the 1930s and in 1940s, that's when chromosomes were discovered. Okay, the Barr body, which is the inactivated X chromosome in mammalian cells, was discovered by Murray Barr in 1940s. Okay, and the chromosomal determinants of sex was determined around the same time, where, you know, women were believed to have XX chromosomes and men to have XY chromosomes. Okay, and this is what we were all taught in school, that the Y chromosome basically determines sex, gender. Okay, and of course this is a very simplistic way of looking at it now, because as we know, nothing in nature exists as a binary. It's always a spectrum. So a complex trait such as gender has so many steps, okay, to make it happen that anything can go wrong. So for example, the Y chromosome contains the gene called SRY, which is basically a transcription factor which turns on a whole bunch of other genes that make a man. So if you didn't have the Y chromosome, everyone would develop as a woman, okay, in the womb. That's a default sex. But when SRY is turned on, it turns on a whole cascade of genes that will determine maleness, okay? And maleness comes about by so many different factors, not only from development of the genitalia, but also the hormones that are being produced, okay? So there can be a lot of things in between. So a person can be born female but actually have XY because somewhere along the line, the Y chromosome, the signaling from Y chromosome does not result in a man, okay? But they have XY, but they are women. And these women actually have what we call Swyer syndrome. Okay, some men actually have 2 X's and 1 Y, and this is called Klinefelter syndrome. And some women have actually only 1 X chromosome, no bar bodies, and these are called Turner syndrome. Any chromosomal abnormality or even genetic abnormalities can cause anything along the spectrum of what is considered intersex, or what now is known as differential sexual development, or DSD. And sporting bodies have ever since then have been having a really hard time trying to categorize and how to classify these athletes. And I'll talk about that in a bit, okay, after I powder everything. All right, so I've powdered everything. So now I'm going to try to go for this like Brat Makeup, which a lot of people online are doing, okay, which is basically a halo eye with very nice lime green lid. Okay, but first I'm going to contour the underbrow here just to give my face a little bit more definition. So I'm just going to use my bronzer palette. Okay, I'm just going to go in with, I think, something warm, I guess like coffee beans. Okay, and I'm just going to buff out the underbrow here, so there's some definition there when I go in with my eye. Okay, and just bring that down the nose. Okay, so the other thing that people started testing around this time was, of course, testosterone levels. Okay, and testosterone levels is also something that has very marked distribution. Okay, natural variation. In pre-pubertal children, you're supposed to have almost negligible testosterone in both boys and girls. Okay, but during puberty, testosterone obviously rockets up during male puberty. Okay, so in nanomoles per liter, which is what I think most countries use, adult men are supposed to have between 10 and 35 nanomoles per liter of testosterone in their blood, and women are supposed to only have about 2.5 to 4 nanomoles per liter. Okay, so in the 1940s, the range for women's testosterone was set at 10, which is the lower limit of what men's testosterone is supposed to be. So using a slightly darker color, just going to define my crease there a little bit. On top of the naked parades, women were supposed to also undergo chromosomal testing and testosterone levels. And if they passed all this tests, they got what they called a femininity card. Okay, a card that says I am a woman and I'm allowed to compete in this Olympics. And this practice was actually going on for quite a while. Okay, and almost until recently. And since then, the testosterone levels have been lowered and changed throughout the decades, okay? And sometimes without even telling the athletes, okay? So I think right now it's somewhere around 5 or 2.5, which is even lower than it was in the 1930s. There are some women who have genetic abnormalities that lead to a high testosterone level, okay? You can have a high testosterone level from many different conditions. Some can be congenital, for example, with a condition called congenital adrenal hyperplasia, where they basically have a overactive adrenal gland causing more male hormone, or it can be acquired in conditions such as polycystic ovaries, where the testosterone levels are higher, and these are usually associated with increased incidence of things like acne or hirsutism, or excess hair growth. But in all other aspects, these women are women. Okay, they were born as women. They have complete female genitalia. They might have a bit more trouble conceiving, but they are anatomically and physiologically women. Okay, so I've basically got that crease down there. Now I'm going to use this, my friend got this for my birthday, it's a Victoria Beckham kohl liner. I'm going to use that to map out my halo eye. This is the dark brown one. Start at the inner corner and draw my lid. Wow, this is really creamy. So I'm just outlining my halo eye. Okay, I'm just going to buff that out slightly. Oh, it comes with a buffer on the other side. Okay, repeat that on the other side. So of course all this have been exemplified in very famous cases, such as the case of Caster Semenya, okay, who is a South African runner who was disqualified for having too high testosterone levels. There's actually a very good podcast series right now on NPR and CBC called Tested, all about the history of sex testing at competitive sports. Okay, and this is where I pulled most of my references. So I'll leave that a link down in the description if you want to listen to it. It's very, very good. Trust the process. Completely different eye shape that I usually do. Let's see how this turns out. and some of these women have actually been forced to take medications to lower their testosterone, and they have to hit a certain level, like 5 millimoles per liter, before they're allowed to compete. And these can affect athletic performance as well. So you don't really know whether it's the actually lower testosterone or whether the side effects of these drugs that actually make them a bit less competitive when they compete. Okay, so now that I have that shape on, I'm just going to put on some of this Pac-Man from Trixie Cosmetics right on the lid. And before that dries out, I'm just going to buff that all on. Buff that all on the lid. Fill up my lid. Okay, same here. Blend it up into the crease here. Okay, I'm using my Norvina palette. I'm going to set it with this limey chartreusey green right in the middle. Now actually I will set right in the middle of the yellow, okay, and then blend that outwards with a green. So using a tighter brush like this, I'm using that yellow just to go in the middle, okay, to give that brightness, and then going in the green all around it. Now I'm just going to go in with my Ultim Mattes, define that halo eye a little bit more. Right now it's a little bit sparse. Just blending that into the greens. Just going to blend this here out. Just blending it into the green, but I'm trying to keep that lid space as defined as I can, as oval and round as I can. Here's where it's quite important to discuss what people mean by unfair advantage, okay? So most women who compete as DSD athletes all have some sort of competitive advantage because they exist on the spectrum of intersex to DSD. Is that something that really should be penalized? I mean, if you think about it, natural variations in sportsmen's bodies have given everyone competitive advantage. Michael Phelps himself was supposed to be abnormally proportioned such that he was perfect for a swimmer. Simone Biles is born with a low center of gravity and a bone structure that makes her perfect for gymnastics. If they're not doping and they're not abusing performance-enhancing drugs, shouldn't these women be allowed to compete because of their natural advantage? Or at least not demonized to be called, men, or trying to deceive sporting bodies to allow them to compete in female categories. And when you think about competitive advantage, there's so many other factors that go into making an athlete, okay? Economics, diet, childhood factors, psychology. I mean, even Simone Biles with her perfect physique and everything could not get past, okay, the wobbles, okay, a few years ago. It really is quite a controversial issue how governing bodies should deal with DSD athletes. All right, I'm gonna try to fix this eye up a little bit and I'll be right back. Okay, so I really messed up my brows. I was trying to go for some light yellow blonde brows to match my hair, but something went wrong with my brow setting. I think I tried to use this Superstay Maybelline to set my brows, and that was a big mistake, okay? It all started coming off when I was doing my brows. The LA Girl Pro Face, which I've been using for years, is really tried and true. Never try anything new. Okay, so now I'm just going to bronze up my face. Going back in with my Peace Up Poppy. So there have been calls to, create maybe a third category for these athletes, transgender athletes, intersex athletes, people with DSD. But of course, that brings up even more questions because there is such a low percentage of these athletes in the competition itself that you're probably never going to be able to fill a category with just these athletes. And it's just going to be quite farcical, them competing against themselves. I mean, it's such a minority that it would be quite impractical, okay? I think the estimate is that there's only 0.3% of athletes actually identify as trans, intersex, or DSD. Coming together, looking quite brat. I've got like nice pink contact lenses in too. Baking a little bit here. This just softens the nose contour a little bit. Going in with a more neutral blush. Imane Khelif herself, she has moved on, and she's actually going to be progressing in the Olympics, and that's a really good sign. But that's of course not without controversy, and I think people just need to be able to accept the fact that she is actually a woman, okay? And I mean, I'm not a sports expert or anything, but I really think that there has to be a more sensitive way to deal with these issues, okay? Not having people like J.K. Rowling ranting on about trans issues when this has nothing to do with transgender issues at all. All right, okay, I'm just going to make sure all this is nice and blended properly. okay? Throw on a lip, and I'll be back with the finished Brat look. All right, and this is the finished look. My Brat, very neon green, sparkly outfit, okay? And my very cool yellow hair. Okay, this hair I styled actually after I saw Vanjie wear her beautiful, beautiful bob cut, okay, on All Stars. How's it look? But anyway, this is my Brat makeup, talking about sex testing at the Olympics and other competitive sports. What do you think? How should organized sports deal with this natural variation in people's hormones and gender expression? In my opinion, I think they should be allowed to compete as women, okay? Their hormone levels do not define them, okay? Their determination, perseverance, endurance, and everything all should be recognized, okay, in sports. I'm not a sports person myself, so I don't have that much skin in the game, but if you do have an opinion, please comment down below, alright? And meanwhile, okay, make sure you vote in the American elections, okay, to make sure that the future is female. Alright, and this is my Brat look, and I'll be seeing you next time. Bye, like and subscribe. Oh, fashion headache. Fashion stomachache. So, don't forget to buy tickets for my Disney show, okay? That Qabaret Duz Dizney Pluz is going to be a really crazy show spoofing everything on the streaming platform, okay? And I'll see you next time. Bye.